Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Lisa Dury, CEO of RLD Group. Before we get started, I want to do a quick tech check on every live stream. Make sure you can hear and see me. For those of you that are here already, if you can drop into chat, why is it important today for you to talk with us, not just listen to us, but talk with us about unlocking workplace well-being? Why is listening at scale important to you? And what would you like to get out of our time today? So for those of you here with us live, if you could drop in the chat, why is it important for you to be here today? Can you hear me and see me? We'll get started, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation because we've got practical, tangible things that you can do right now for yourself and your organization, and also being in conversation with each other. We're hoping to learn with each other together today too. So if you can hear and see me, if you want to drop it in the chat, I would love that, and then I'll bring our guests right up. All right. Looks like we're good. We're good. Okay. So if we could have Rochelle and Alinka come to the stage, I'd like to get this party started. Rochelle and Alinka, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm also grateful to be here with both of you, Rochelle and Lisa.
Thank you so much. You know, it's interesting. Before I get into the formal intros, I think it's important to presence for the audience. You know, we are running this under RLD Group, right? But you'll see there's 3 company names on the screen with my guest today. And what we have been doing is not seeing ourselves as competition because we all do similar work, but seeing ourselves as a collective and in collaboration with each other. And I think part of that is about well-being, right? And I think there's just such a tie here for all of us when we think about all the statistics we know that we're going to show you today, and how do you resource yourself and create the space to be seen, heard, and valued, and also inspired to take that next step. So I just want to presence my appreciation for Alinka and Rochelle for collaborating in this space right here, right now. Thank you so much. So, all right, everyone. So we're here today to talk about unlocking workplace well-being, and we want to talk to you about listening at scale, because here's what I know. How many times of the year do you do pulse surveys and employee surveys? You get the results and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's so many things they want us to do. How can we possibly do all this? And then you start to feel shut down and defeated, or you don't even want to look at the results. Or maybe you think, I don't even want to do a survey this time. Like, we're all too busy. We already know what's wrong. Let's just keep working, right? Well, the reality is that employee engagement is declining rapidly. And what's happening is well-being is a conversation that's happening every day. You may not be saying well-being. You might be saying burnout, stress, too much change.
Looks like we lost Lisa.
I just went backstage.
There you are.
Why not? So you might be thinking about all of the different ways in which well-being is an undercurrent too, right? So we're going to bring that forward today, and we want to talk to you about some of the statistics we're seeing and what we know is happening in the organizations we work with, and bring your voice into this conversation. So I'd like to start with the same question that I presenced to you, the audience, for Alinka and Rochelle. Why don't you introduce yourself, and let's talk, hear from you in 1 or 2 sentences. Why is talking about unlocking workplace well-being important to you right now, and what is possible from this conversation? Alinka, why don't you go ahead and start?
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Alinka, and maybe you don't know that my career is engineering. I had like more than 20 years as a career in leadership and engineering as a woman in tech. And I realized then when I was on the other side that I really didn't give myself permission to balance work life with, I would say, with the personal life. And learning hard way, that was a journey for me where I first have to work a lot on my awareness, what my well-being is and the meaning for myself, and what are the tools that I can use every day to really balance work and life. And while I was doing that, I reflected on my tech people, engineers that I know they are struggling with well-being every day, because there is a lot of stereotyping how engineers are really great thinkers, However, they are people, human with a heart, that they have to do also life outside the work. And many times they don't have opportunity even to talk about well-being at work. I heard many times how they are claiming that tech spaces are very dense, that there is no space and opportunity to talk about well-being. That's why I feel that there is my mission here to really start talking more about it, that even though that the people behind technology, they are great thinkers, creative people and innovators, they are also people, human with a heart, that they have to care for themselves and they care for their well-being. So that's why it's very important for me to talk and work in this space of workplace well-being.
Alenka, I really appreciate your perspective always. I'm always inspired by you. And I think one of the things that the pull through in our collaboration with you, Rochelle, and I is about the humans and like putting the heart back into the humans, which are inside tech. So thank you for that so much. And Rochelle, why is it important for you to be here today in this collaboration, in this conversation? And what becomes possible from this conversation today?
Thank you, both Lisa and Alenka. I always appreciate your insight and what it invites me to consider differently. I always love your perspectives. But for me, workplace well-being and well-being in general has come from my own journey of seeking well-being, and like how previously or for a long time I was living out of alignment, and that created friction in my well-being, and I really didn't focus any of my energy on my well-being. And when we just shove it in the corner, it declines significantly, and I noticed the effects in myself and how it impacted everything in my life, my work, my relationships, how I related to myself. And so my own journey has inspired me to want to bring, the conversations around well-being, putting energy into that, specifically to bring it to the forefront, because it is really meaningful and important. If we're living as well-beings, then so much more is possible. And we spend so much time at work and so much of our energy at our workplaces now, that I think bringing this conversation into the workplace is really valid and relevant during this time. And if we can focus on well-being at work, then like we can have the ripple effect of that in other areas of our lives, where we can bring more energy and presence to well-being, to kind of talk about it in our holistic lives. Like Alenka was saying, we have our work life and our personal life, and like the ripple effects and the cross pollination of those two can enhance it in both areas, I think.
Wow. You said something that I haven't digested before until this very moment. You said we are well beings. Like I've always thought about human being versus human doing. That was how I figured out part of my own burnout experience. But well beings, to be well. Thank you, Rochelle. This is why when you're in conversation with others, what can just pop naturally, like that was not planned. It's just dropped into my heart when you said it. And I would say for me, one of the things that is very on my heart and in our business, RLD Group stands for Rebooting Leadership Drive. And we built this firm in collaboration with others because we know that inside tech, it feels for many always on, many times never good enough, and will replace you tomorrow. And how can you have well-being or be well if that sort of stress and energy is around you all the time? And so for me, I think about it just at the organizational level. Well-being matters so you can have high performance, better profits, lower turnover, more innovation, less, quality issues. So there's a lot of business case for this too, as we think about the humans inside. So RLD Group is very much aligned with this. That's why we're hosting this. What I'd love to do is bring up a couple of statistics just to kind of level set for all of us. And for those of you live, I'd love to invite you to use the chat to bring your voice into this conversation. And why don't we pull up the first statistic and let's just presence this as far as what's really going on. So we'll wait for that ticker to pop up. Yeah, 41% of employees are currently performing optimally, consistently giving their best work, right? That's Gartner. And one of the things I can tell you is in our executive coaching engagements and the workshops that we're doing right now, people are tired. People are scared. They're, shutting down. And this is all the way up, right? From a change fatigue standpoint, people don't have all the answers anymore, and they're worried they're going to get it wrong. And so if you have 41% currently performing, what's the cost to your organization? What's the cost to your customers? And there's one more statistic here I'd like to show as a trend here. This statistic, let me just get it here so I'm correct here. 2019. So this statistic is a 29%, and now we're at 41%. So look at the dramatic jump. Alenka, would you like to bring your voice in here when you're thinking about these statistics? What's on your heart and in your mind to just presence and what you're seeing in your client base too?
When I think about that, only 41% of employee, they feel that they are performing optimally. So it's always thinking, how do we set up our goals? How high are our expectations? Are those expectations too high, maybe? Or are people that they are working under source and they are really not feeling well to perform to have a full performance? So I always bring the conversation, why this gap? From personal perspective, because people, they can feel, see, hear what's going on with themselves while they're working. And on the other hand, also from the organizational perspective, because they can be, some organizational systemic requirements for people to perform at such high expectations. And especially tech company, what I see, they are pushing their employees to are really setting very high expectations that sometimes are not really realistically set. And maybe the organization and the leaders, they should look at their expectations more so from the organizational perspective, what is possible and why are not performing so well. Many times what I see is that whenever they are employees at a point that they have to do evaluation about the work performance, when they are seeing these big gaps that they are feeling a lot of inner voice, I'm not good enough, I should work more. And the leaders, that they don't offer a lot of conversation when they would ask the questions that how they are feeling. So whenever I work with people, I always invite conversations first. What are you seeing as an employee, or what are you feeling about your performance review? And on the other hand, also the leaders, why they see from the organizational point perspective, like can be a process optimization, can be also high demands, that those expectation in general or in average in organization are not, I would say, set up to so level.
So Alenka, when you say that, what runs through my mind, there's this exercise we do a lot in our organizational, audits, and we look at start, stop, and continue. Is it your experience that it's just do more, not reevaluate? Am I hearing, is that a pull through there for you?
Yeah, many times there is not, people while they're working, they are seeing this year-long expectations for themselves. So whenever they are seeing that they are higher demands or that they cannot push through, they are not able to stop and pause and asking themselves what's going on. They just want to push through till the end. And that's what I'm seeing, that coming the stress, overwhelm at the end of year many times.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Rochelle, let's bring your voice in here when you think about the statistics, 29% to 41% from 2019 to 2023. I mean, you lived in tech. You are an engineer by heart and trade, and you also have a very inspiring perspective when it comes to wellness and well-being. So what are your thoughts and what are you seeing in your client base and just in your own experience? What do you think is happening to go from 29 to 41%?
I think part of it is we're talking about it now, whereas I in 2019, I'm not sure I heard a lot of chatter about workplace well-being, and I think it's becoming more and more prevalent, especially with the statistics on burnout and stress, and just how much we're all carrying and how much stress is impacting our health and well-being. And so I think like putting energy towards it and talking about it has enabled us to put more energy toward those bringing well-being into the workplace and into our own lives. I think COVID had a big impact on many people reevaluating what is meaningful and important to them and bringing their focus to their well-being as well. And I think that could have transversed into the workplace as well. So it's again that cross pollination of one side impacting the other. And so I think we're just talking about it and more, it's more on the forefront for us these days.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I don't even think I talked about well-being in 2019. I talked about burnout, and I was thinking a lot about just how the world was going from VUCA to Bonnie when the pandemic hit. The brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible life that leaders are having and organizations are trying to figure out. And if I were to add my perspective to what you're saying about the conversation and the statistics, I think one of the things that's on my head and in my heart that I'm seeing in the companies that we're working with is, even just AI and machine learning and the impact that's having on business process and upskilling teams and all of the uncertainty that happens in the world today. I just think that that's all contributing. Like, I don't have a mic drop moment there. I'm just presencing and thinking out loud with you as we talk. And for anyone live, if you want to chime in here, we'd love to get your thoughts on that because we want your voice here. But I'm really seeing a lot of how do we use it? What do we do? Is it safe? How do we optimize? Go, 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 go. And there's just a lack of pausing, I would say. And also I'm noticing this rise to the challenge, which tends to be a marathon rise to the challenge, not a momentary rise to the challenge. So I want to transition just a bit when we think about reasons why this is happening. So we're talking about external forces, right? And we're talking statistics. But I know that there are some things here when we think about all of the ways that organizations as a system are sitting here and we're looking at, okay, so we know well-being matters. We know people have hearts and there are humans inside the system and people genuinely care, but they're really busy. But maybe we should highlight, the key criterias or the chunks, if you will, the themes of why this is happening so that we can then share some insights on what you can do about it. Alenka, would you like to share a couple of reasons why that are on your heart that you're passionate about fixing?
I was reading a Gartner report just lately from 2023, and it was really interesting what came to me that there are 3 HR mindset barriers that disconnect employee well-being from organizational strategy. And that's thinking that better wellness requires trade-off with the performance, that wellness is too broad for organization to influence, and that for responsibilities for wellness is somewhere else. And I would like to tackle the first one first, that better wellness require trade-off with the performance. It's interesting perspective because on the other side, what we are seeing that performance is going down, that the people that they are not reaching the target goals or target expected performance that they are set with the organizations. However, what I'm seeing is that it's very difficult or challenging, or sometimes the people, they don't have knowledge how to connect well-being strategies with I would say, broader strategy objectives, business strategy. So how to really find reasons why would you invest into well-being strategy in the organizational scale. I like to talk about the systemic solution or systemic perspective. And this why, from the leadership perspective, it's very hard to really see through. We have already some data, and you showed some statistics about that the well-being really influence and impact performance. However, still many times it's difficult to justify with not having enough numbers. And numbers are those that they convince the main leadership in organizations. I would say that what we are seeing is really trusting that we not right to do and invest in strategies on the organizational level for well-being, trusting that will really contribute to the people's performance on one hand, and that it's also the right thing to do. It's required a changing perspective for more really business financial measures towards people. And I know I was surprised that in the past there was a lot of even research articles that they talk about the influence that the well-being, workplace well-being, and employee well-being is really important for organizations to look at.
Thank you, Lenka. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing those three perspectives in. And one of the things that came to mind when you were talking is, I see a lot of interest, and we do a lot of work doing Clifton Strengths Finders within organizations, right? And when you're working in your strengths and you're able to connect across organizations and break down silos, like that's improving well-being. So I think part of the problem is that it's hard to quantify for people to get their head around it. And yet the work we do every day with our clients is helping with well-being, because when you're in your strength zone, you're less stressed. And when you understand each other's strengths, it's less likely that you can navigate. When you understand each other's strengths, conflict can reduce because you understand what's making each other tick, which also is well-being, right? Less conflict, higher well-being. So Rochelle, you've been in so many of those workshops with me, and you've got perspective with your clients as well. What would you like to add here when you're just thinking about observations or insights? Because I think well-being, if they don't have a way to quantify it, it's like, well, that's just too big. But no, we can quantify it. There are things you can do. So I'd love to bring your voice in, Rochelle. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And I do think that making it somehow measurable is an important aspirational goal, because when people can't measure things, it's hard to stay focused on those. And I think we're kind of at the beginning of like prioritizing well-being, especially in the workplace. And so those metrics are going to come, I think, with time. And also, I think our old model of working, and something we talk a lot about in our exchange facilitation style, is the way of the old, of the command and control, of the few people having all the answers for everybody, is an outdated model. And we need to move more toward letting everybody have a voice in this, because well-being is an individual thing and you can do it collectively. So bringing more voices into the conversation on how to create those metrics, how to measure them, what's important and meaningful for everybody in your workforce as far as their well-being goes, I think is a really important aspirational goal as well, and something to move toward, like letting your employees' voices guide the way to creating that culture of well-being. And for leaders, I think taking care of your own well-being and making sure you're modeling that in the workplace to give permission to others in your team to be able to also prioritize their well-being and not have that misalignment of what's being spoken versus what's being done, I think is also really important. So those are a couple of things that came to my mind.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, you inspired me to think about my own journey. So when I was burning out and working nights, weekends, and always on, and the doctor told me you have Silicon Valley-itis, because I couldn't remember things. I had a very hard time making decisions. I was grumpy and cynical. Like there was a whole bunch of things going on underneath my burnout. And I realized I was modeling burnout for my entire organization. And at that moment, I had to really grapple with shame and guilt, because everyone was responding to me when I was emailing at midnight or on Saturdays, right? People were worried about me, but nobody was pushing back or trying to change the behavior because I was in charge. And so one of the things when I came back from burnout was I realized we need a new set of ground rules, and I need to model this, and I need to hold myself accountable, right? And also create an environment in our organization where well-being matters. And so I think until I had that lived experience, I had enough knowledge I could talk to it intellectually. But once I experienced the inability to function from burnout, it became really real and very scary. So I appreciate you presencing that leaders need to model it. And also, when you're taking care of yourself, you're better at making decisions, and you're also better to be there for your team in times of, ups and downs and really tough decisions. It's just a really interesting reflection in the moment when we're thinking about this, because that statistic about the C-suite, I was like, I'm going to look it up. 90 something. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Randy. 94% of the C-suite admit they could use help. And that's a big number. And that means they are like, I know it matters and I don't know what to do. And the system is, it's already operating. I don't want to take it offline or screw things up. And I think the employees inside the organization and our HR colleagues inside the organization are already stretched so thin that conversations like this and resources like that we provide, even the executive forums that we're going to start running where people can come together and actually focus on this, that's an offer of help, right? Alenka, what are your thoughts on how we might help C-suite leaders? What comes to mind?
The first thing, I understand that this can be seen as a very complex problem, because many times not only that you have to look at the three levels like individuals, employee, relationship level, and also a complex system organizational process level, but it's also knowledge and skills that those leaders has to have around that. I would say do not hesitate to ask for help and support. I think that there is a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills how to leverage. As also Rochelle said, voices, inviting all voices in organization to co-create the culture of well-being. So reach out and help and support, just facilitating those conversations. When I think about the tech spaces, what the leaders told me, they said, we would like to open spaces that they are safe, that we can have a conversation about it. Just having conversation in a safe space would bring a little bit of awareness what well-being is for individuals and what we can do for the organization.
I appreciate that, Alenka. Yeah. I was coaching a C-suite leader this week, and the conversation got very practical about just time management. Where are your meetings? When are you energized? What's overwhelming you? How can you create some space to actually think? And who on your team might be able to be a part of this conversation instead of trying to solve it by yourself? So we're very aligned there in what we can do. And Rochelle, what are your thoughts on what can C-suite leaders do? 94% of them are asking for help and they don't know where to go. What are your thoughts, and what invitation might you have for a C-suite leader, even a reflection question, to just help them understand the importance of this and to resource themselves in the moment?
I think it's important to recognize that this is something new. And so with things being new, we're not going to be good at them right away. And so bringing curiosity into the forefront, I think, is really important. And maybe just like, what's one small thing that a C-suite person can do to bring well-being to the forefront? What's one question they can ask in their next meeting to talk about well-being or approach well-being as a conversation with everybody? And it doesn't have to take the whole meeting. It can be, the first 5 minutes of a meeting, to just bring something forward that enhances everybody's well-being. Maybe it's a moment to pause and breathe. Maybe it's a moment to pause and reflect on what the meeting, their highest hopes for the meeting. Just giving people a little bit of space can create exponential outcomes when we give people the time to think, the time to breathe, the time to pause. And so just what's like that one small thing that can be focused on for one day, I think starting small and reducing the overwhelm can be a key to moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Yeah. It's interesting when I think about the hybrid work world that our clients are in now, right? And this is evolving. 3 years ago, you didn't have to think about a pandemic. 1.5 years ago, you didn't have to think about remote work and how many days in the office and how are we going to work it. So I just want to invite the C-suite leaders, the 94% that are like, I don't know what to do and I need help, to remind yourselves that you are capable and you do have an amazing team and you can figure things out. And when you have that moment of overwhelm, to pause, right? And give yourself a moment to just breathe and recognize you're a human being in the system too. We're here to help. We love helping. Our executive coaching, our workshops, executive forums, etc. Like, we love co-creating with you and we'll help you figure it out. But I don't want you to have to wait to work with us. I want to give you something right now. And one of the things I work with the C-suite leaders that I coach a lot is the question, how might we? And so I just want to offer that right now. How might we improve well-being? How might we optimize our team meetings? How might we reduce the stress in our organization? How might we enable our teams to bring their voices in? If you can use how might we as you're ideating and thinking, it really does invite creativity without barriers, and you'd be surprised at what shows up. And you might even ask yourself, how might I look at my week this week and optimize it for my own well-being? And you'll find some answers. So I just want to offer that. What are your thoughts, Alenka, on how might I or how might we? Because I know you use this question too.
I love that question because it brings a lot of opportunity to create. And I would like to invite to include more listening. So when you are thinking about these leaders, it's just giving yourself permission to listen more. And ask question. Whenever you are really listening well and asking some questions, you can learn. You can ask your employee or team members, what are some, I would say, skills or some activities that helps you resource while you are working? And while we are sharing and listening, we learn for ourselves, and maybe we can find one skill or one tool that really works for us.
Yeah. So even in a meeting, what makes you feel resourced or what reduces your stress or how do you balance everything? Just being curious to get to know each other and then learn in that process too. That's wonderful. Yeah. Rochelle, what are your thoughts?
My mind went a little blank for a second there. Something I notice in myself, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed about something, is I'm not asking myself the right question. And so that how might we is a nice reframe, because I often get stuck in a loop of why, or why not, or just not a very powerful question. So when I reframe my question to how might I take a small step forward? How might I invite a conversation forward about this? Or how might I resource myself before I go to that next meeting? I think is a really powerful reframe when we get stuck in those kind of questions that aren't serving us at the highest level and keeping us stuck in those loops of overwhelm.
I've done that with you. Just so everyone knows, when we're collaborating, it's one of our favorite questions, right? How might we bring up this really big topic and break it down into bite-sized pieces to help people, right? Like, this is what we do. And so if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed, it's a great question. I just want to look at the statistics here for one more thing, because I believe I think we got them all. I think we got all the statistics. So what I'd like to do is transition us now and think about lack of ownership, right? Because this can be someone else's problem, or this is HR's problem, or you know what? The employees are on their own. They need to balance their own stuff. They're adults, figure it out. So I just want to bring your voice in to think a little bit about what does ownership mean at the collective level, at the system level, and how might we invite ownership into the conversation without it feeling burdensome or, pointing fingers? How might we all be part of the ownership? What does shared ownership look like? Alenka, what are your thoughts?
When I think about ownership and organizations, it's about first people believing that they have a power and ownership about their own well-being. So first comes to me, it's awareness, what well-being is for them, and then second, that they have a power to do something. So even to advocate for their own well-being, that's among one skill that everyone should have but advocating on the way that really is respectful, that it's work related, that also graceful to the leaders. So on the other hand, we have organizations and leadership that they should create environment, or I would say practices that support individuals when they have a challenge about well-being, that they can ask for support. It's about somehow a game between those two employees, that they know about yourself, what they need and what they want and what they can ask for, and over the organization, that they create some spaces, opportunities, and it's also respect for employees when they are coming and ask for support. I strongly believe that every organization has to invest in both sides. First, on the individuals, that they can grow their awareness, and I would say self-leadership or conscious leadership perspectives. And on the other hand, also, if they will have the organization, more of those people, they will help co-create the organizational systems. Because when we bring more people's awareness, and when we have more conscious leaders in organizations, we can co-create together the environment that works for all. So it is ownership from both sides. And when we come together as human beings with a high awareness and I would say willingness and openness to co-create something that works for all, then also openness, the organization and leadership, that they will invite our voices. I am sure and convinced that those organizations can create spaces that will feel well-being for all.
Well-being for all, shared ownership. Thank you, Alenka. Rochelle, let's put your voice in here. What are your thoughts on shared ownership, and how do you define that, or see it coming alive in organizations versus it being that's your problem or you go solve that? How do you look at shared ownership of well-being in organizations?
First, I look at like the outcome of what shared ownership looks like. Like if we're all in it together and we're helping each other as well as helping ourselves, that elevates everybody, and everybody can move a little bit farther in the outcomes because everyone is supporting each other in a shared mission. And I think as far as creating shared ownership, as Alenka was talking about in the co-creation and what we do in our workshops and experiences, is bringing everybody's voice forward so they have a part in co-creating that. And that gives them stewardship and ownership in creating those outcomes. So they don't feel like they're just doing something because somebody told them to do it, but they actually have an active part in creating the future that they want. And I think that can create so much inspiration in all of us when we have ownership in creating our own future and our voices are heard and respected in that way. I think it creates really beautiful outcomes and elevates everybody that is in the process.
I appreciate that so much, and I know how powerful it is when all the voices can be heard, and that it's facilitated as we do, to where everybody gets to put things on the table and people can then experience the exponential impact of everyone working toward the same thing. I think about it a lot from a financial well-being standpoint for organizations, right? Everybody works on the budgets. They're always trying to manage the costs. Everyone's got shareholder value. We want to make sure profit margins are there, right? So financial well-being is pretty much honed into companies as far as the focus. Everyone knows that matters. And when we're thinking about organizational well-being and employee well-being, the shared ownership is there too. We just have to, I think, become more consciously competent in that space versus it just being an afterthought. So I appreciate your voices on this so much. If I could presence one other small tip that I know works a lot with our clients, we have this exercise from Gallup. It's called the best of me or the best of us. And I think it's really rooted in well-being. And so there's 4 questions. You get the best of me when, right? You can count on me too. Here's what I need from you. And you get the worst of me when. So the best of me and worst of me is basically your opportunity to highlight for people when you thrive and when you bring out your best. And the worst of me is like what triggers you or stresses you out, or when you're not able to, bring your best. Those questions are easy. You can ask those today. Ask yourself first, right? Here's what I need from you, is of the organization or the leader, the team. And then here's what you can count on me to is that this is my core values and here's how I show up in the world. You can count on this. I think even that at a team level is such a game changer when it comes to well-being and seeing the humans inside. And it allows you to index for yourself first, because you have to start there, and then to bring that forward into your team. So I wanted to drop another practical thing you can do. Of course, we can help you facilitate that always, but you can, think about that and be inspired by it to do it for yourself and bring it to your team on your own as well. So I'm going to bring up a link because we want to invite you into an executive forum. So this is highlighting some of the things. RLD Group is launching executive forums in 2024, and we are putting together topics based on your interaction of our live streams, the data that we're seeing, what's happening in the client base. So if you want information on these executive forums, they are free. They are for this community. Please go ahead and opt in and let us know, and we'll invite you to those. And I think I'd like to just give each of us a chance. I just did my final small win or action you can take. But of course, join us. You can do that. Alenka, last thoughts, one inspiration, one small action to inspire people to take shared ownership of well-being. What would you like to leave us with today?
That well-being, even organizational, is not one-time action. It is a journey. It's run on the long distance. However, start today with the small actions and see where you want to go. And one small action is just pause and listen more.
Pause and listen more. One small action. Yes, you can only run a marathon by prepping and getting ready for that. You don't just get up one day and run a marathon, right? So I love this. Pause and listen. Rochelle, what are your final thoughts here today for our audience and also for Alenka and I, because we're in this together? One small action, final thoughts, inspiration when it comes to shared ownership of well-being.
I think the question that's coming to me right now is spending some time with what might be possible if you and your whole organization were well-resourced as far as well-being goes, and what might be possible for you, your team, who you serve, your customers, if everybody felt well in what they were doing.
If everybody felt well in what they were doing, what becomes possible? Mic drop. That's a mic drop, right? And here's what I want to say. I'm like, there's so much buzzing in me. How do you define well-being? I'm going to leave you with that. Drop it in the chat. If you're watching the replay, comment on it. What is your definition of well-being? Because I can tell you it's different for each person. And the clearer you can get on what well-being is for you as a leader in your organization, as a leader in your life, the faster you can take the next right action to support your well-being, and then also look outside and around to support others. Alenka and Rochelle, thank you for being here today. Randy, thank you for producing the show. Everyone who's here live, thank you. Thank you for those of you on the replay. If you want to get in touch with us, please do. We'd love to continue the conversation in our executive forums. Make sure to like and share this episode if it resonated with you. Please follow us because we're doing more of this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Rochelle, Alenka, thank you for collaborating and being here today to bring your voices in. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.